early on, I just learned to kind of sit back and listen.
Yeah.
And it is hard, you know.
Figured it out. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Figured It Out. This week we're here with a great entrepreneur, Maureen Cumpstone, who is the former owner of Sorella Rose Restaurant in Flourtown, Pennsylvania. Really excited to have Maureen here today. She's actually a really special guest, someone really close to our hearts here at Fieyo Media, someone who's really helped us along the way, and it's because of the great experience that she's had running her own business and working in entrepreneurial work throughout her career. So we're going to share that with you today in hopes that you can really get some value out of what Maureen has learned throughout her career. So on that note, I'll leave it over to you, Maureen. Why don't you just introduce yourself and I guess tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Sure. So my name is Maureen Cumpstone. I am the former owner of Sorella Rose Restaurant as well as Sorella Rose Avalon, and currently am the entrepreneur in residence here at Ursinus College, running the Management Center for Integrative and Entrepreneurial Studies.
Right.
So I've been here close to, actually it'll be 3 years now come January.
Wow.
Yeah.
That went quick.
It did go quick.
Yeah. So like for people who don't know what the Imagine Center is, just give them a little bit of background.
So the Imagine Center is an interdisciplinary center on Ursinus campus. We are open to any student from any year, any major, and our role is to promote entrepreneurial mindset development and skill development across Ursinus campus.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just for a little background, when I first got started up at Fieyo Media, me and my partner Alex Drum, and actually we had another partner at the time, we worked with Maureen for almost a year, right?
Yes.
And we really did a lot of hard work, and Maureen was just a great person to have to bounce ideas off of, or if all of your ideas suck, she normally had a good one. And she does a terrific job continuing to do that with other kids looking to start businesses now today, and not just businesses, right? So it's just there's all kinds of different like entrepreneurial work that these kids do.
Yeah, so it could be anything from starting up a project to an initiative, some sort of activist campaign. It could be a social enterprise. Really a variety of things. It could be a film or an artist trying to sell their artwork. Right. So it crosses all disciplines, and it's for anybody really that is interested in being able to take ideas and move them forward and bring them to reality.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the main things we got out of working with you is like, we had an idea at the beginning, and we have a completely different idea now, but being able to like test that idea out and turning that like broad idea into really specific tasks is probably one of the things you teach very well, and one of the things I definitely picked up a lot from.
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned over the course of the 3 years that I've been here is really the emphasis needs to be on taking those first couple of steps. Mm-hmm. So really moving from idea to action. Yeah. Because, well, as you know, we spent a lot of time sitting around a table, bouncing around ideas, and to move off of the idea stage and to start taking some action takes a little bit of time and a lot of effort. Yeah. But it's the first opportunity and it's the first step to really move a project forward.
Yeah. So what is involved in doing that? How do you take an idea from this conceptual thing, that these big dreams, and then break it down to step by step? I mean, it's the process you taught us, so and it's worked well for us. So what would you say is the most crucial thing about that process?
I think the most crucial thing about that process is really testing out your idea with actual customers or people that can give you honest feedback. If you do that and you put yourself in a position where you really sit back and listen to customers or to potential customers, eventually you're going to hear enough that it's going to give you the right direction.
Right.
They're going to tell you which direction to go in.
Right.
I had this weird experience today where, and it wasn't a for-profit, or it wasn't a business, it was a group of people in a department sitting around a table, and they were getting feedback about a particular program that they were running. And in the same conversation, they were looking for, well, what do we do next year or next semester or next year? And they had the answers right there from the students
Right.
themselves, telling them exactly what they wanted.
Right.
So it's really about active listening and really being able to hear what the customer is saying, put your own ideas aside, and
Yeah.
allow the person that you're speaking with to really speak and to listen with an open mind.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, they'll give you the direction.
Right. Yeah, I think what you said at the end there, being able to put your own ideas aside is really important, and it's really hard to do because most people who are involved in some kind of business venture, if they're not, financially invested in it, they're definitely very personally invested in it. And it takes a lot to be able to hear some feedback from somebody that maybe your idea isn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
Or, even if it's not that your idea is not good, but, maybe this idea over here is just better. And you have the resources to do it. It's even just really hard to accept that fact and want to move in that other direction or pivot to the right way. So I think a lot of people struggle with that, and that's definitely
Right.
something that's really key.
And it's one thing that I learned very early in my career, and maybe it was because of my inexperience or my lack of experience, but early on I just learned to kind of sit back and listen.
Yeah.
And it is hard. You think you know what's the right thing to do or what you want to do, but as we say, the market dictates.
Yeah.
The market speaks.
Get into the story here. How did you kind of make it to where you are today? I know we've talked before about how some things in your childhood actually inspired your entrepreneurial drive and desire. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, how your parents had the restaurant where you were going?
So I literally grew up in a restaurant, in the back kitchen of a restaurant. So from the time I was very young, I came home from school. Home was the kitchen of a restaurant, and so that we had a very large kitchen table in the commercial table in this kitchen, and had to do my homework there. And from a very early age, what I did learn is customer service. So because I was there, if a customer came in or from the people, we operated pretty much around the clock. And so the customer always was first and always mattered and became the priority regardless of what you were doing. So even at an early age, where homework should be a priority, if a customer came in and something was needed, I stopped my homework.
Yeah.
And tended to the needs. If the phone needed to be answered, it's kind of funny because it was a long time ago, before cell phones or before anything like that. At our home, we had a phone that had a different ring, and it was the business.
Really?
So if somebody didn't pick it up in the business, I had to pick it
Right.
up at home.
Right.
But I knew it was the business. So both phones rang all day and all night long at our home. Yeah. So I got in. I learned about customer service at a very early age. I learned about the proper way to treat people, both customers as well as people that I worked with, or people or employees, because they make things happen, and just really, all the ins and outs of running an effective business.
Yeah.
Controls, money, how do you account for it? How do you make sure that you are paying people appropriately? What kind of record keeping you need to keep? So there was the business aspect of it, and most importantly, the customer service aspect of it.
So when did your parents start the business? How old were you?
I was I was maybe middle school.
Right.
Yeah.
And they had it all the way up until,
yeah.
I mean, at least until you went to college.
Yes,
right? So
yeah.
that whole time, there was maybe 10 years at least,
right,
where you were involved in it. So
yeah.
How did that kind of start to make you feel? Like, did you like being there every night? Were you excited by it? Did you develop that drive at that age, or did that come along later?
Yeah, I was excited by it. I kind of almost didn't know any different. I always had the drive to be an entrepreneur, but I also had the opportunity to go to school, so I was a first-gen student.
Yeah.
And what the hope is that it would open up more opportunity, which of course it did, coming to Ursinus. But the itch and the drive never went away.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time outside of the restaurant. So for the first 15 years of my career, I spent 5.5 in a very large for-profit organization,
right,
and 9 in a small but very substantially growing nonprofit.
Right.
And my roles in those companies were really to start up various initiatives.
Right.
Not only start them up, get them going, but see them through to operation,
right,
and then continue to maintain them. So I was very lucky
to
have mentors and to have those kinds of opportunities to grow those kinds of skills.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to back you up a little bit, and I definitely want to talk about that part of your career because I know how really important that was for your next step, which was starting the restaurant.
Right.
But so, like a question that would kind of address, college kids or maybe high school kids right now, thinking about going to college or starting an entrepreneurial venture. So, you were mentioning that you kind of had that itch from a young age, but, you had the opportunity to be a first-gen student. And I'm sure, when you were going to college, if you had the opportunity to go, you went.
Yes.
And nowadays, it's still pretty much like that, but I think there are people who are now considering, with the cost of college nowadays, am I better off to maybe just start something up on my own at age 18 when I graduate high school, or go work an internship if I can get one at age 18 and not go to college. I know you're pretty passionate about this topic, so I just wanted to let you speak on it.
Right. I am a firm believer in college education. I'm a firm believer in lifelong learning.
Yeah.
And higher education. So I do think that it is very, very important to get your education.
Yeah.
I think it opens up a lot of opportunities, and it provides you with foundational skills that enable you to be successful if that's the route that you want to take.
Yeah.
So regardless of whatever route you want to take, be it entrepreneurial or be it professional schooling, or doctor, lawyer, or being going out and working in a company, I think it does give you the necessary. I don't know if I want to say necessary, but I think it's foundational.
Yeah.
It gives you a really solid foundation by which you can continue to grow and continue to learn.
Right.
And one of the things that I've realized, recently is there was sort of this parallel track. So I continued to have this entrepreneurial desire, this entrepreneurial need, this need to continue to start something and grow it. And yet at the same time, parallel to that motivation was this, professional career right out of Ursinus, for a long time, for 15 years. And I always felt like I was in two different places until they sort of came together. When I had the skills and the time, and it was the right place, the right time in my career to go out on my own.
Right.
So it just was interesting to think about being able to build those skills and then continue to use them to kind of go on my entrepreneurial desires.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting perspective, right? Thinking about you kind of like grounding yourself on one track, but also learning some critical skills when the other track is probably like a little bit wild and wants to go off, but like it has a lot of creativity and like really strong desire to make something happen.
Right.
So like a collaboration of those two makes a lot of sense and probably equals like a successful venture, right?
Right. And I think, and we've had this conversation about, a professional career and the skill building that's necessary for that. And entrepreneurial pursuits, and sometimes young entrepreneurs will find that they need to continue building their skills in a way, and maybe doing their entrepreneurial pursuits on the side, or having, and I think, and I said this, you might have to cut this out. One of the things that I knew is that I could always work. So I knew from an early age that I could always make money, which I think fueled my desire to do something on my own, because I was not scared about it. So for, like, you were talking about, the skills that you have for training, personal training, and some of the other opportunities that you have to to have income coming in, while you're developing your business. And in the back of my mind, I don't know if I made a conscious decision to go this professional route, but because I always knew that I could always fall back and use some of my skills, in an independent project to make money.
Okay, so that gave you some fallback room, I guess.
Right.
Call it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, all right. So that's interesting too. But what I'm interested to know is like, where was the point where those two parallel tracks came together? Like, what was it? Was it just the fact that you had the opportunity and you seized it, or was there a certain mindset that you had at that time that was like, you know what? I think it's about time I go and I scratch that itch.
Yeah, I think it was it was a lot of different things. It was a personal situation. It was the right time. It was the ability to take a risk. So I felt like that was the right time. And so all those things kind of came together just at a moment in time. Yeah.
So what was the opportunity at that point? So I guess give a little bit of background. Where are you at right before you're about to start the business?
So I had a baby. So my 9-year career, it was a decision point. What do I do?
So you're working at the nonprofit for 9 years now. So it was what? You graduated from Ursinus, worked 5 years in a for-profit, kind of developing your own business unit there.
Yes.
And then moved to this nonprofit where you were doing something similar, kind of a new business development.
Yeah, I was, when I was there, I was responsible for getting departments up and running. So it was very small, and as it grew, it required some structure and some guidance. So I spent a lot of time in the human resource department getting it up and running, and the training department getting it up and running. At the point where I had a baby and there was death in the family, and it was just time to decide, okay, where do I go from here? And so I decided to do it. Yeah.
So your parents had the restaurant up until then,
yes.
And that was the point where you took over the restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then I guess let's move forward from there. What happens day one in the restaurant? What's it looking like? What decisions you have to make pretty quickly off the bat?
So day one was about determining how to move forward, how to create a business that could be sustainable for, the next 20 years. There was a lot of market changes. There was a lot of changes in people's behavior. So the the laws changed dramatically about how people could drink and how they drove. And so it really needed a very, very different strategic approach.
Right.
And it was very costly. So I had to make a decision about whether or not I would, I was up for that task,
right.
because it couldn't survive the way it had survived
right.
in the past.
So a couple of questions. So just for some context, what year was it?
1995.
Okay, 95. And so at this point, your parents have owned the business for 30 years?
Yeah, maybe.
Something like that? So now your challenge was, it's 95, 30 years have gone by, this business is, it's a successful business, it's been in business for 30 years,
right.
But it's at the point where if it stays on its current path, maybe they'll be around a little bit longer, a couple more years, but you wanted to take it to the next level. And what went into that decision? That's a very tough decision, right?
So it was interesting because it not only had been around that long, it had been around since like 1920.
Right.
And so it had been pretty much, an institution in the town, and I had enough experience and enough financial astuteness to understand what the financial situation was, and enough vision about the market to understand that there needed to be a change, and a dramatic change.
Yeah.
And that it was very, very difficult, because at the time I was young. It doesn't seem that way to you, but I was very young, and I was very convinced about the strategic direction and the direction things needed to head in, and a lot of people didn't understand that, and didn't have the confidence in my decision making to understand that I was very, very clear about the decision. I was very, very clear about the financial picture, and I was very good at making decisions based on data.
Yeah.
And so it was a no-brainer. When you make decisions based on data,
right.
It goes back to, customers tell you a certain story and a direction, so does data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But it was 95.
It was 95, so it was all handwritten data.
Yeah. So you weren't punching numbers into an Excel spreadsheet. These are
these are handwritten Excel spreadsheets. Yeah.
But the fact that from that you were able to figure out the direction back then, it's really cool.
Yeah, it was handwritten data, and one of the smartest things I think I did is, here's a plug for accounting software, is early on begin using, like really early on, like within a month, begin using accounting software.
Right. Because there's so many transactions in the restaurant that you're making
daily,
on a daily basis.
Yeah. So that was one of the smartest, business, operations-wise, smart to just start from the very beginning using an accounting software.
Right. You took over the business. You had this enormous challenge right off the bat of kind of changing the brand and making some financial moves. So how long did that take to kind of play out, and when did you kind of start to pick up some traction?
So it took about a year to play out. So while I say, I feel like I was making numbers on the data, it took about a year to play out. And customers are pretty routinized, so it was a little bit hard for customers to make the transition.
Yeah.
But there were certain things that we put in place. We changed the menu. We dramatically changed the decor. We had a strategic direction about all the pieces of the entity being consistent under a consistent brand. and having all of the things that go into a business be consistent with that brand.
Yeah.
The one area, we had a bar area, then we had a restaurant area, and then we had a banquet area. And each of those had sort of their own vibe and their own customers. And I needed to bring everything together under one brand and one umbrella and make that brand strong so that we could build on it.
Yeah. How critical was that to your success?
I think it was, it was instrumental.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big proponent of that, right? And I think branding is like the solution for long-term growth, right?
Right.
And I think that's probably, another tough move to make, right? Because you had the whole family brand since a long time.
Right.
And then having to change that all up.
Yeah.
But in the end, it ended up being a smart decision.
Yeah, and I think, getting back to your point on branding, I think your branding has to be authentic. So if you provide a really top-notch service, and you treat people well, you treat your customers well, and then you build that brand based on that, there's authenticity there, and people come to learn that about your brand, that it is authentic, that they can rely on it, that they can rely on you, and your company to provide, excellent service and an excellent product.
Yeah.
And that's what we began doing.
Right. Yeah, I hope people can realize just from this conversation that you're a genuine person and you mean, well always. And I could imagine that as you started to, grow this business over the years, that became apparent to your customers fairly quickly.
And it goes back to what we talked about in terms of just listening to them.
Right.
So I was young, and so rather than trying to create this part of the vision was about listening to the customers and trying to understand, we talked a little bit about the steps at that point in time. I didn't know the steps, so I had to figure them out. I had to learn, test things out, see if they worked, listen to the customer, try it again, test it out, see if it worked.
So what were some things you were testing out besides the branding?
So branding was one of them.
Okay.
So, the decision right off the bat to do things that were not, that could be easily edited or changed. So not investing a lot of money in, say, menus that couldn't be changed,
right.
That you had to live with for a year or 2 years because you spent so much money on them.
Yeah.
So that's just one little example. Trying to think of some other examples about, I guess that's sort of it, like nothing being totally permanent, yet looking good, so that you could edit it. And I think we had talked early on about like my first website, which was crazy, when you think about like websites, but it was a big deal. And one of the things, the two components that I was interested in, one is that it looked fairly good for, today you would consider it a prototype. And two, that I could edit it and that the information on it reflected current information, and that people could find that information pretty easily. Yeah. And I think that set us apart too.
Was that rare back then?
It was rare back then. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that was just by finding, somebody, a young company starting out that understood and listened to what I needed, and was willing to build it.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what made you get the website? I guess you're just listening.
Listening to customers, exactly.
And they were like, you got to get on this internet thing.
Yeah. And sometimes it was kicking and screaming. I had a customer that wanted to have monthly business meetings and insisted that I have Wi-Fi. I didn't know what Wi-Fi was. I didn't know how to get it. I was in a 200-year-old building with stone walls. Wow. And he's like, I'm gonna walk you through the process. I promise you, I will give you business every month. I need Wi-Fi. So he did. He walked me through. I'm like, all right, walk me through the process. So he walked me through the process, and here's a guy bringing 40 or 50 people in every month for a business meeting. But I on that one.
Wow, so you
Kicking
had
and screaming
Wi-Fi
a little
in
bit.
a restaurant early on,
Yeah.
early 2000s or something like that?
Yeah, I forget when that was, but it was early on because it was before people even knew about
Yeah.
it. Like, I mean, he was kind of like on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
And so he was, bringing me along.
So I guess
Yeah.
they had like laptops that
Yep,
they were using?
Yep,
Right.
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so, we had to figure it out, how to get all the hot spots all over this,
Yeah.
200-year-old, very large building.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But then that worked, like, so that's kind of interesting to think that like that was an investment for your business. but
Exactly,
it
back
was.
then, back then it
Yeah.
was, yeah.
Cool.
Most people, it was the transition from people stopping in to see you to do business face to face to calling you to do business, and you would, do business over the phone and mail out information. To then they wanted information, on the web, or
Yes.
they want, and so it was the transformation and sort of keeping up with it in order to keep the business.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's
So,
just.
little side note.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't even know. Like, I can't think of when Wi-Fi was just like everywhere.
Right.
Because now it is, and you
Yep.
don't even think about it. You
Yeah.
walk in somewhere and you're like, okay, like, what's the password? There is Wi-Fi.
Right,
It's not even a question of
right.
whether it is or not. It's just what the password is.
Oh,
Can I log into
yeah.
one?
I mean, trying to get it, somebody would call for information, and you wanted to, and they'd ask you to email it, and you literally had to like unplug your phone, plug the computer into it, dial up the
Oh, yeah.
connection,
Wow.
the old AOL connection, just to send out one email.
Yeah.
And if a phone call came in, it disconnected it. So,
Wow.
yeah, those were the days.
I mean, that's cool though. Nowadays we take for granted the fact that cell phones and
Yeah.
that I can just, make a call or send a text or send a message on Instagram. And I think people are missing out on that now, right? As
Mhm.
where probably a lot of businesses were missing out on what you were doing with putting in Wi-Fi and
Mhm.
some sending out emails back in those days, right?
Yep.
So I think there's a similar trend going on now, I
Yep.
would say, with some of the
Yep.
newer stuff that, the best businesses are doing, that smaller companies just either don't have the resources or don't know how to do.
Mhm. Yep.
All right, so I mean, we're talking here about, some of the modern technology and how you were using fairly modern technology back then. So I guess this is kind of a good segue to think about, if you had, I guess not if you had the resources, but if you had the skills you now have a little bit later in your career, and you could go back to the days in the restaurant, what would you think you would do differently? Or is there something did you do a lot of the things right? Would you do things the same way?
I think I would have done things the same way. I might have been able to do them faster.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I would do differently is be a little more cautious, because now I have learned. I was in business when the recession hit in 2008,
Yeah.
the end of 2007 into 8 and 9. And prior to that, there was a lot of opportunity to expand, and money was fairly easy to get, and it was fairly cheap. And as a result, it was, I viewed it as an opportunity. So it was really a big opportunity to expand and to buy additional property, to plan for the future. And I didn't see it coming. A lot of people didn't. And as a result, had to really substantially cut back.
Right.
I guess the good part about it was that I knew that.
Yeah.
So I guess in the financial world, your world, we'd call them non-performing assets.
Yeah.
So I had purchased a property next to the business with the anticipation of developing that into an outdoor bar and an outdoor venue, and it was a large piece of property. I was fortunate enough that I thought I was able to get the liquor license from where I was to extend to that new property. but it wasn't generating income at that particular point in time. And I had to make the hard decision that in order to keep and to survive, that vision had to go.
Yeah.
And as hard as that was, because I had put a lot of money into it, I had to put a lot of time and effort into it. And I could see, as you see today, a lot of venues have these, grand outdoor spaces, and the popularity of outdoor dining. So I could see that vision. I had to let it go.
Yeah.
So that, and I had bought a number of other pieces of property, and as well as the expansion into the Avalon market. At the time, it was a really good decision. It did wonders for the business in terms of our visibility with expanding our market. A lot of the Avalon market was CEOs and business professionals from the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
So that expanded our market geographically because we started doing business, we started doing catering business in a wide geographic market. I didn't talk about starting up that business.
Yeah.
So part of the startup, when money was freely available, was a catering operation. And so I realized after 2008, 2009, that was also a drain on the main business. And, in those kinds of financial circumstances, I made the strategic decision that the main business had to be strong in order to survive the recession. Yeah. So I sold everything else off. Yeah. And as difficult as that was, because it was fun to grow, and you had the vision to expand and to continue to grow, and a vision for a really large operation. But the reality of the situation was, and I couldn't ignore the reality of the situation as much as one would have wanted to try. The reality of the situation was the decision had to be sell as much as you could and concentrate on stabilizing the one operation.
Right.
And so that's what we did.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
So I think that's a really good example of putting your own ideas aside and what you want to do, and just listening to the customers and listening to the data and letting that drive your decisions.
And it came quick.
Yeah.
I mean, it really did. So I responded quickly. Circling back to your question, I probably would have been a little bit more thoughtful about expansion.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit more conservative, but I was kind of young. I was in a business group where we all were, really aggressive and wanting to grow our businesses.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just me. I mean, it was a group of my peers. We were all in the same position where we really, as a group, wanted to grow and be strong and be aggressive. And then, this hit. So. Right. I think if I had pulled back a little bit, that would have been what I would have done differently. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, who could have saw it?
Yeah, it's most people didn't see it, I guess.
And you learned a lot through the experience, and you made it out.
Right.
And, you learned, like you said, that you had to focus on that core, and that core survived. You guys made it through.
Yeah.
So I guess let's go there now. Recession lasts at least a year, 2 years, right? 2008, 2009 really, and 2010 even started up. Yeah. But so where did it start to pick back up for you?
Started to pick, I would say, in 10. And that also, that was a result too of, so the economy's getting better, and divesting of all this additional, all these additional assets with a lot of debt. Yeah. About 2010.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so you come out of something like that and you have another strategic decision to make, and that is, all right, we steady the ship is steady, Now, how do you move that ship and grow for another 10 or 20 years?
Yeah.
And it's at that point that I said, I think it's time to maybe consider something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it? Why did you want to? I mean, I can understand, right, that you're looking forward at like this is another like climb.
Yeah. And really it was the my children had grown to the point where they were working professionals now, and they had no interest in the business. So I didn't see an exit plan other than exiting.
Yeah. So you just felt it was the right time.
It was the right, I probably, if I had probably waited till now, it would have been a little bit better financially, but it was the right time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so now, we talked a lot about the Imagine Center earlier, but you're here, you're working with students every day. So how does that kind of satisfy that entrepreneurial itch? I mean, this is an entrepreneurial venture, right? It's kind of your own place here.
Yep.
I mean, you're within the arms of a college, but you kind of run the You Imagine Center, and you get to help other people like myself and other students work on their businesses. Is that doing it for you, or? So
what's interesting is that from an early age, and I mean really early age, I knew, well, maybe not an early, from college age, I kind of knew in the back of my head two things. One is that somehow I would have a restaurant in Avalon. I had no idea. I was driving like a '66 Volkswagen that didn't start in the rain, had a hole in the floor, and literally probably like, I don't know, $20 to my name. And I'm thinking, I know that I will have a restaurant in Avalon. I don't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that. The other thing I knew is at some point in time, I would be working with younger people, like college-age people, or mentoring or teaching something. So there are the two things that I knew. And so I don't know if it was consciously or unconsciously, but I got my master's in preparation for being able to do this. And so I had always worked with younger people, and really liked it, and love seeing things grow. So this is the best of both worlds. You get to see people grow, you get to see their growth as they learn, and you get to see their business grow or their venture grow. So it's sort of like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And on top of that, as you said, having the ability to grow a program,
right.
Even though it's in an institution, but really having the ability to take this program and just grow it in whatever direction makes sense for the college. So it is the best of kind of both worlds.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think this is a great place for anyone to be, really. And I kind of have a similar feeling that I really want to work with younger people. At some point later down the line. I like teaching. I've always liked coaching. I've done some coaching of young kids, and you were saying earlier, I still train some young kids, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy just seeing the growth in people.
Yep.
That's probably what drives my business itch as well, is that I get to see my business grow, but I also get to see the people I work with grow, and the companies I work with grow, and that's why I really like what I do now. So yeah, I think we kind of share that similar.
And I think too, when you're in your own business and you have certain freedom, you can do things like that.
Yeah.
So there are it's a huge amount of work. There's no denying that. But and there's times when you are going to be working when everybody else is not.
Yeah.
And that happens quite a bit. But there's also time where you decide, oh, I want to mentor somebody. I mean, when you came in and mentored our students in our recent hackathon and did a great job, having your own schedule, your own business allows you to then follow through on some of these other things that you like to do.
Yeah, that's true. I always tell people, like, they ask me, and I guess some people have somewhat of a misconception. They think that I can just work whenever I want, do whatever I want, which is not the case, but I do have the flexibility of kind of, if I'm going to work a 8 to 10 hour day, I could start that day some days at 10 o'clock and work till 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
So I can do something early in the morning, or I can, in the middle of my day, come down to Ursinus and volunteer. I mean, we're still putting in long days, but you kind of have the flexibility at times, because not always, to kind of move things around and do other things. And I do really enjoy that. And I do really enjoy the opportunity of working with other people as well. Yeah. So, we've done a good job, I think, of covering your story and talking about a lot of things you've learned. And I think some of the key points, just to kind of recap, were that you've really been able to, throughout your career, focus on the data, listen to your customers, listen to the market, and make your really good educated decisions based off that. And that's really been the key to your success, as well as using the skills that you've learned throughout early in your career, also early in your childhood, to kind of drive that creative side and curb that creative side as well. So it's just, I think those are good recap points. Anything you think I missed?
No, I think you recapped it really well.
Okay.
So thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, so, all right, one more quick thing. So what's next for you? Is this the landing point? I mean, this is a great place to be in. You just talked about the two things you wanted to do. You've already had the restaurant in Avalon, and now you're mentoring young people. Is there something else on that list still?
There is something else on that list, John. I don't know. I have to try and, I'm trying to sit tight and enjoy what I do. I watch young people like you and your partner Alex, and I want to be in the game. I want to be in there with you. So I think that I have to figure that out, like how to be in the game, but how to be. I think I've evolved to the point where I really, really love mentoring students, mentoring people, watching these businesses grow. And then there's like this other piece of me that just says, you want to get in and play.
Yeah.
You want to be in the game with them.
Yeah.
So I guess going forward, it would be a happy medium, sort of being in the game, but being on the team, but sitting on the sideline. I don't know,
like
or
that.
At least getting
a couple plays here and there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess unlike earlier in your life, you don't have the very specific goal of like, I want to mentor or I want to have a business in Avalon, which is crazy that you have that specific of a goal, by the way. But you do still, when the right opportunity, if it were to arise, then I'm sure you would jump all over it.
Yeah. So, but trying to figure out how to maintain what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
all right. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, sounds good. Thanks a lot for talking.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great conversation.
Yeah.
You can, come in and play at our game anytime. You're
I might want to take you up on that.
We'll put you in. Draw something up. Anytime. But yeah, thanks a lot, Maureen.
You're welcome. Thanks, John. All right. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.